Hey, it's Gabe with API Nation. One of the biggest issues in the real estate industry that's not talked about enough is compliance. How do I stay compliant? What does that even mean? Who's responsible for what? There is a lot to get into. I sat down with Summer Goralik, a real estate compliance expert. Summer runs the website expertdrecompliance.com. She previously spent time in the Orange County District Attorney's Department in the Real Estate Fraud Unit, and she spent 6 years in the Department of Real Estate as an investigator. So if anybody can get us the information we need about how to be compliant, it's her. If you want to learn more about Summer, there's a link below. Enjoy the interview. Stay tuned afterwards for a little bit of discussion about next steps you can take to maintain compliance.
I realize compliance is not everybody's thing, but compliance is literally everything. And some people will realize that and learn that the hard way, right? I just hope more brokers realize that before it's too late, that, prioritize it, because this is how you truly kind of complete the successful mission of your brokerage. Is not just about the profits. It's about making sure you're complying with the law.
Can you give me any examples of a brokerage where non-compliance really impacted their business?
Oh gosh, Gabe. Yeah. I mean, right now I can tell you, and this is why compliance is important. Okay. It doesn't matter your branding. DRE doesn't care how successful all your sales, your listings. Nope. DRE does not care about any of that. If you make mistakes, crucial mistakes, and they're a pattern of mistakes, you're going to find, that it could lead to disciplinary action. And what I was going to say is that the DRE is so strict right now. Like when I was there, it took a lot to lead to a formal accusation. I mean, it took fraud, it took misrepresentation, really bad stuff. But it seems like now I've had brokers come to me after an accusation was filed for like unlicensed fictitious business name stuff or advertising, and maybe they throw in lack of broker supervision or something. But that's kind of scary, actually. And that just goes to show that brokers and salespeople, they need to prioritize compliance. It used to be that you could get away with a lot of this stuff, but nowadays it's a much more, you have to be very careful in this climate. And all you have to do, if anyone's curious, is you go on DRE's website, look at the accusations that they're filing, look at the violations that led to that accusation, and that should scare anyone straight. Right? Mm-hmm. That should provoke you to learn the law or reach out to someone that does and kind of do a self-evaluation of what's going on in your business, because it really doesn't matter how successful you are. If you have a run-in with the DRE that becomes a lot more than you thought, I mean, you can't change that, right? You can't go back in time.
Interesting. What is the actual, what sort of punishments do people actually face for these things?
So most minor on the list is a corrective action letter, which right now they're pumping those out without even contacting anybody first. They're just sending out this letter saying, hey, we saw your website, you're out of compliance, fix it, blah, blah, blah. It's a piece of paper. It's not public record. I wrote an article about it on my website. This is a good thing. If you were to receive a corrective action letter, be happy. You have an opportunity to respond, to correct your compliance, and move on with your life without any threat that it's going to go further. However, there is a next step, and that's citation and fine. This is a newer outlet that the DRE has for disciplinary action. Right as I was leaving the Department of Real Estate in 2014, this law came into effect. So I didn't get to ticket anybody. I was really bummed about that. But essentially, it's a ticket, and it's telling you what you violated, what your fine is. They can fine you up to $2,500 if you're a real estate licensee. They can even fine people who don't have a license, who are in violation of the licensing law of engaging in license activity without a license. And they can be charged up to $2,500 per unlicensed act. But then there's the grand finale of things, and that's formal disciplinary action, which nobody wants. That's a formal legal filing, which would most likely require you to engage an attorney to defend you at a hearing, or unless you can get it settled out before then. So yes, they have different levels. And I should probably mention the citation and fine, that's not public either. So if you
Yeah.
were cited, no one would actually see that on the DRE's website, which is, I know people who would pay a lot more than $2,500 for that
Yeah.
luxury. Yeah.
I'm curious, the investigations you had at the Department of Real Estate, how do those come up? Like, are they random? Are they like these people have been flagged? How's that work?
Well, so when I worked at the Department of Real Estate, it was heavily complaint oriented. So we worked off complaints, and complaints could be on any kind of minor technical issues, but it could also be major, major fraud. I mean, I worked all types of fraud cases when I was
Yeah.
there, and I don't think a lot of people know, but Department of Real Estate, they work very closely with law enforcement. I was even the law enforcement liaison at some point when I worked at the DRE, and I was going on FBI raids when I was there on big fraudulent operations. So it's a spectrum. But I will say now, 2021, California Department of Real Estate, they're doing a lot more investigations based on their own proactive efforts. It's
Hmm.
not, they don't have as many complaints as they used to, which some would say is a good thing, but they're very proactive these days.
Interesting. So when you do this, you probably find, some things you want to advise them on. What are like the three biggest thing for agents before we get to like brokers? What are like the three biggest like slap on the wrist things that agents are doing to
And
keep in mind?
remember, I should just say, if agents aren't doing it, brokers are going to get in trouble too, right? Because
Yeah.
brokers should be supervising their agents. So, some things that I see agents doing that they shouldn't be doing or should be doing and they're not is retaining their email communications. So, DRE requires, in connection with any, real estate transaction, that their electronic communications are retained. I
Hmm.
don't know what it is, but this is one that's always missed when I go in. Or if it is, they're like they've kept two emails or something like that. And the truth is, if a DRE, if you get a complaint, you have to imagine that consumer on the other end, they're going to give 1,000 pages full of emails that were
Yeah.
communicated. So I see agents not retaining their emails. I see a lot of little, technical non-compliance. Their DRE license number is not on their contracts, or it's not correct, or they've missed signatures and things. Another age, I mean, I see a lot of advertising non-compliance by agents, and that's like a whole nother beast of compliance too. And a lot of people are getting in trouble for advertising non-compliance right now. DRE,
Yeah.
you have to imagine DRE at their fingertips. They have everyone's website, they have everyone's social media, so it's just, it's like picking cherries. It's so easy for them to find violations that way, and agents, they often don't have all of those disclosures in place in their advertising.
Yeah. Now that it's all digital, how does that work? Like if I'm an agent, a realtor, I have an Instagram page that's dedicated to my business. Do I have to watermark like everything with, my number, or do I just have to put it in the comments, or what is the?
So for California, in any advertising, they would call it first point of contact solicitation. You have to have your name, your DRE license number, and the license name of your brokerage, or the
Hmm.
license DBA name for the brokerage. That has to be everywhere. So, a Facebook account. I find this anytime I review anyone and I look at Facebook, I feel like it's very rare that anyone has put their license number on that platform. And there's
Yeah.
an about tab. Like, there's literally a tab where you can put it all in there and just feel safe. But I
Yeah.
swear it never gets done. But yes, to answer your question, it's got to be done everywhere. It's got to be in their email signature plates if they're talking to consumers. If they're soliciting via text, it should be in the text communication. So, and if you're a mortgage loan originator, you also have to have your NMLS number. So there's a ton of things.
Wow. Yeah. I did not know about the tech stuff. That's really interesting. So all to hear about all these things that they should be concerned about, and
Right.
realizing, like thinking back, some people are very good at these things. Like I have seen these things
Absolutely.
around, but
Yes.
it's very hit and miss,
Right.
So uh
I would agree with you there. Yeah.
yeah. So for agents, those are the kinds of things that are kind of issues. And like you said, if they're doing those things, brokers typically have to answer for them. So what about for brokers? Like what are some of the things they typically will get flagged for during like an audit?
If we're talking about a broker who doesn't, handle trust funds, just, normal kind of conventional brokerage, lack of broker supervision is a charge that DRE will apply literally, if they find any violations, it's possible they're going to get a lack of broker supervision. A real estate broker is responsible for creating policies and procedures by which they will use to review and monitor real estate transactions, advertising, trust fund handling, file retention, making sure their salespeople are trained and knowledgeable about anti-discrimination laws. So many brokers, when I walk in, I'll say, okay, where are your policies and procedures? And they say, oh, well, we don't have anything written down, if that's what you meant. I was like, okay, well, what are your policies and procedures then? And they say, oh, well, we want to make sure our transactions are complete. They say, okay, do you have a transaction file checklist? How are you making sure your agents are getting all of those, documents in their file? And they say, oh, that would be helpful, huh? So, a lot of them are flying kind of by the, they're not really, they haven't thought about putting a system in place. And by the way, it's all about this. This is actually in the law. Regulation 2725, which every broker out there who supervises anyone should know this one by heart. Regulation 2725 basically demands the broker has a regulatory duty to have this system in place. And so many do not, Gabe. They don't. So I work with a lot of brokers in improving their broker supervision protocols and creating policies and procedures, which they should have in place, that should be in writing and distributed to all of their agents. You want to put your agents on notice on what is required by the broker. Otherwise, an agent can go rogue. They can do whatever they want, and they wouldn't have known, they wouldn't have known otherwise, right? The broker's not telling them what they expect.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So there might be a little bit of overlap here, but like if I'm a broker, as I'm onboarding new agents, I'm recruiting, I'm onboarding agents, what would be my best practices to get them onboarded and successful and make sure I stay compliant?
Well, you would want to set expectations up front, right? So, you would have this policy manual. That policy manual would lay out everything. It would include a transaction file checklist. Okay, these are the requirements. All files, all documents should be submitted to the broker in a timely manner. And, brokers can even spell that out, that anytime a transaction document is signed by a principal, that document has to be submitted to the broker for review within 48 hours. I mean, brokers can set these types of rules, but I would make sure you have a transaction file checklist. You have a policy manual that goes over advertising compliance, goes over the non-discrimination laws, and that goes over, file retention. Everything that the broker is expected to comply with is based on their agent's ability to adhere to those rules, right? Make sure, agents are retaining their emails. One thing I would do if they were onboarding an agent is I would ask the agent to provide me with a list of all mediums in which they are going to be advertising, right? So if they have their own professional website, let me have your website address. And I want to see this before it goes live. And that's another thing. There's a lot of agents advertising out there in the digital realm. I wrote an article about this. And it's not being spot checked, right? It's out into the world. The broker's not reviewing it. And unfortunately, the DRE is reviewing it and they're getting in trouble. I mean, you were asking about common violations. One that I see all the time is the use of an unlicensed fictitious business name. So an agent or broker, you can't just use any name you want, right? It has to be a name that's registered and licensed with the Department of Real Estate. And they're strict. Like if you had a company, ABC Realty Inc., and let's say you drop the Inc. It's just ABC Realty. If you don't have a licensed DBA for ABC Realty, you're out of compliance. You could see a corrective action letter for an unlicensed DBA. So if I were onboarding an agent, I would make sure they know something like that because, this is all low-hanging fruit. And I always tell people, it might not seem like that big of a deal, advertising compliance, but once the Department of Real Estate gets in the door, they're going to stay a while, right? Yeah. Oh, looks like you've never been audited or we've never done a broker office survey on you. You know what? I think I want to see a few files and boom, and now they're there. Well, we don't want them there. So compliance is like really important, even like the technical compliance that you wouldn't think is that big of a deal, but you just don't want to interface. You don't want to become friends with the DRE investigator. You don't. When a DRE investigator walks in your door, and let's say you have all of your documents stored electronically, you have to have the means by which to allow them to view that file and even print that file. So whether that makes it easier or not for the broker, can the broker do it? So, yeah.
So those files have to be readily available. The broker has to know where they are.
Yeah. And if it's in the way the law reads for like electronic storage is that they have to have a means by which the DRE can view the file. So you could put the Department of Real Estate investigator in front of a computer screen and let them view it. And then if they wanted it printed, you'd have to be able to print that.
A automatic backup of documents, mostly PDFs from transaction platforms into Google Drive, sometimes Dropbox. How important do you think that is? Is that good to have? Is that absolutely crucial? What do you think?
No, I think it can only benefit to make sure that documents can be found in a central place. I mean, it sounds like that's what that's helping doing, right? And making sure that they're there and they're secured and that they can be readily submitted to the broker. I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, sometimes, there are agents that drag their feet and they don't submit documents to their broker. If there is a place where those documents can always be found as documents are being uploaded or downloaded or whatever, that can only help as I see it.
How much time do you imagine this would save a brokerage and kind of your experience of looking at their systems to have this automated backup?
The challenge for the broker is to make sure that when it comes time, if you get a request for a file or, God forbid you get a subpoena, that, you'll be able to get the complete file and send it to the department. Definitely. I mean, if there is a central place that the broker can go to quickly pull up a file, and, especially at big operations where, maybe you have a whole chain of command where, people are dedicated to different parts of that process. But if there's one central place that the broker can go to gather that, transaction file, I think that would have saved them a lot of time.
If I was an agent, probably more if I'm a broker, where would I find out more about compliance?
I always tell, and this could be for any licensee in the United States, get familiar with your state Department of Real Estate, right? And, in California, they have a lot of resources on their website. I mean, I don't know if people want to read the law book like me, but there are other friendly publications, broker friendly or agent friendly publications or advisories that they put out. And they put out a bulletin 4 times a year. And I literally have talked to people who've been in the business for many years. And they're not reading the bulletin. I mean, there's a lot of articles that get put out there about what the Department of Real Estate is seeing, or AKA what they're going after, or that kind of thing. So, when the department speaks, pay attention. You could learn something from that. So definitely the State Department website would be a good place for any licensee to check. Yeah.
Is the bulletin emailed out or is it just posted on their website?
They do. No, they email it out. You have to sign up for, I think, the RSS feed, that kind of thing. But yes, everyone should be logged into that. And actually, I think if you're plugged into like e-licensing in California, I think you get a notification when they put the bulletin out, which is nice.
So that's where I would go for compliance. What about as far as you and your consulting, where would people go to find out more about that?
I have a website, which is usually where people find me, www.expertdrecompliance.com. I've wrote a lot of articles that have been published, in different places. So sometimes I'll get calls off, an article that I've written. But if you just Google my name, I'm sure you'll find my site.
Thanks again to Summer for stopping by and sharing all that awesome information with us. If you want more information about how you can use one of the backups we talked about in the interview, the Google Drive backup from .loop or DocuSign Rooms or Brokerment, we have links below in the description of the video so you can get started with those backups. If you want to learn more about Summer, she runs the website expertdrecompliance.com. The link is also below. We're so excited to bring this to you. If you found this helpful, hit the like button and subscribe to API Nation. If you have any ideas, questions, thoughts, let us know. Shoot us an email, give us a phone call. We're API Nation, connecting the world's applications. We love doing this stuff.